Homage to teacher Shakyamuni, homage to warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, profound and subtle, is rarely encountered indeed, even in a million eons of time. Now we are truly able to hear, to study, and to diligently follow it. May we fully and completely realize Tathagata's profound and true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings from the suffering of samsara and to generate supreme bodhicitta. Next, let us continue our study. We will proceed with the words of my perfect teacher, specifically the contemplation on the impermanence of life within the common preliminaries. Now, various profound analogies and significant meanings will be meticulously used to comprehensively explain the fundamental impermanence of life. For us dedicated practitioners, contemplating and deeply understanding impermanence is an absolutely crucial and profoundly important aspect of our spiritual journey. This essential concept has already been thoroughly mentioned and emphasized many times before in various teachings and discussions. I sincerely hope that every monastic and every layperson, without exception, will diligently and wholeheartedly practice this understanding, integrating it into their daily lives with utmost sincerity and unwavering commitment. Because impermanence is an exceptionally sharp pith instruction. It can directly and profoundly sever our deep attachment to this present fleeting life. If we truly wish to become genuine dedicated practitioners, then we must consider this profound truth. Then you must see through the affairs of this life. Simply saying you've seen through this life with words alone won't break your attachment. You must truly understand all phenomena, whether it's fame, status, wealth, happiness, or anything else people long for. They are nothing more than fleeting illusions and dreams. In reality, they have no true substance. You must deeply recognize this principle. If each of us can truly realize the impermanence of all phenomena, then our attachment to this life will disappear. If you no longer have attachment in this life, you can't help but develop faith in the Dharma. So why is it that people in the world today always say, "I'm too busy right now and don't have time," or "I'm too lazy and can't practice"? The reason is that they haven't developed a strong sense of impermanence in their minds. If such a profound and pressing sense of urgency truly arises, then one certainly won't be particularly lax or negligent in their actions, nor will you ever use your intense busyness as a convenient excuse to delay your essential practice. So everyone here present must always remember this crucial point. The content of the words of my perfect teacher is extremely important for us, especially the 4 common and fundamental preliminary practices. You must diligently cultivate and develop them within yourself. Some people say, "I've already practiced for over a month or more than a year." That's definitely not enough. You must practice for many years. In the end, the true meaning of the teachings in the book will arise within our own minds. Then, by continuously familiarizing yourself with it, your practice will definitely bear fruit. I read a profound story about the revered Buddhist master Dilgo Khyentse Choje, which was thoughtfully written by another esteemed Rinpoche. Throughout his life, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche always carried the Dharma texts of the words of my perfect teacher with him. He never parted from this Dharma text for his entire life. Every single morning, before his quiet meditation, he would carefully open it and thoughtfully read a page or even 2 pages. Then he would calmly continue his spiritual practice. For many consistent years, this was his daily unwavering routine. That Rinpoche said, he had received profound and extensive teachings from the revered master Dilgo Khyentse Choje more than 10 times in total over a significant period. About 5 of those times were together with a group, and about 5 times he requested the teachings personally, or he received them on various different occasions and under different circumstances. So I was thinking, as for Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, as everyone knows, he is recognized in both India and Tibet as a great accomplished master and also a great yogi. Even someone like him never neglected the words of my perfect teacher. It is a preliminary practices of foundational teaching. It is a practice for beginners, and he never overlooked it. Instead, he truly regarded it as an essential instruction that remains indispensable, even when one attains the highest realization. So I sincerely hope that many of our Dharma friends can truly learn valuable lessons and inspiration from him, from his teachings and actions. Because I have seen that many Dharma friends, when they are outside, when I go out for medical treatment, some people from the Institute come to see me. When they come to see me, I ask, "What do you have in your bag?" Some people do not answer, perhaps because they possess a significant amount of money or have other important things going on inside, afraid that I might confiscate it, so they don't say anything. But some people say, the words of my perfect teacher, and that makes me very happy. Since he values the Dharma texts so much, he probably reads it at least from time to time. So you should really think about this as well. Even someone as advanced in age as Choje Dingo carried this Dharma text with him throughout his life. So why would we think we don't need to do the same? Practice isn't something you do for just a day or two, or that you can complete after receiving the transmission once. It's not like that. You need to receive and practice it throughout your entire life. Why did Patrul Rinpoche receive it so many times from Jigme Gyaltsen Nyugu? Why did Jigme Gyaltsen Nyugu do so? Why did he, in front of Rigtsin Jigme Lingpa, also known as the Fearless One, receive so many transmissions of the words of my perfect teacher? There is a reason for this. So many Dharma friends really need to reflect on this point, especially now as we are practicing the common preliminary practices. Every Dharma friend must not be careless and must not treat this as something ordinary, because I truly feel that this practice is not difficult at all. You can practice by analytical meditation or by resting in meditative equipoise. What does analytical meditation mean? You can open the book and read through each teaching about the impermanence of life. Ask yourself, is this really so? Read it once. Whether it's the stories in here or some of the principles, just read them once. And then reflect, yes, it truly is like this. There is nothing in this world that is truly reliable. Everything is constantly changing. Everything transforms in an instant. There is nothing that is eternal, solid, and unchanging. So in your heart, you will truly feel a sense of sorrow. Or you might feel that there is nothing reliable in this world. Some great accomplished masters have said in their teachings that one should truly feel about the entire and continuous cycle of samsara as if one has been completely deceived by a very close and trusted friend. What this means is, if your good friend deceives you, you feel deeply hurt and disappointed. It's as if even your best friend has deceived and misled you. So in this world, who can you really rely on? Why is it that some people, when they experience setbacks in relationships, seem to lose interest in everything in the world? On the other hand, if we truly develop a sense of impermanence within ourselves and give rise to such a sense of renunciation towards samsara, that is actually a very good and beneficial state of spiritual practice and profound contemplation. So therefore, we must not ever give up on the essential preliminary practices which are fundamental to our spiritual journey. Although in this world many teachers have different instructions, we do not exclude or reject this. Since ancient times, both the Chan tradition and the Dzogchen tradition have existed, and there have been many great accomplished masters. Some require the practice of preliminaries, some require empowerment ceremonies, and some don't even need empowerments, just casually along the way. For example, when Vairotsana met Padmasambhava, he helped him attain realization at the fastest speed, extremely quickly. This happens in both Tibetan and Han Buddhism. But I generally follow a more systematic approach, teaching according to the structured methods of Vajrayana. Most people may not necessarily be like that. It's like education in the secular world, from kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, all the way to high school. Progressing in this way is more suitable for most people, so I hope everyone will practice the common preliminary practices. And I recommend that everyone practice the common preliminary practices. I hope that in the future, many lamas will promote Tibetan Buddhism in a gradual, step-by-step manner. If it is spread in a gradual way, it will be less likely for people to develop wrong views. Many people feel that genuine realization and authentic experience arising in one's mind stream are not that easy to achieve. Why is that? Because ordinary people have particularly strong and negative conceptual thoughts. To change this requires a certain process. It is through the nectar of the Dharma that these can gradually be transformed. In the end, attaining enlightenment is still possible. Therefore, in our practice, we must place great importance on the preliminary practices and not just pay them lip service. For each teaching, we should either contemplate it or rest our minds in meditation on it. At our institute, I feel that we have already practiced these teachings for over 100 days, which is quite good. But we need to keep practicing. The longer we spend on the common preliminary practices, the better. If we can truly succeed in practicing the common preliminary practices together, just like the lineage disciples of Yike Lama in the past, in the future, on our spiritual journey, certainly many people's spiritual practice is not easily abandoned. Now let us begin our discussion. Some individuals accumulate wealth and resources through creating negative karma and unwholesome actions. Although they may temporarily obtain happiness and satisfaction from these gains, they will ultimately experience immeasurable, boundless suffering that extends far beyond imagination. On the surface, some people may appear to be committing negative actions, such as killing and other various kinds of wrongdoing. On the surface, it truly seems that not only do they not experience any suffering whatsoever, but instead enjoy a happy, fulfilling, and prosperous life. Some people often say this as well. Although a certain person has committed many negative deeds, it seems that his business is thriving and he has never experienced any suffering. Does this mean the law of good begets good, evil begets evil is unreasonable? There are such opinions. In fact, these people have not truly examined the profound workings of cause and effect. If you really want to observe, then the causes he is creating now do not necessarily ripen immediately. Moreover, the happiness he is currently experiencing is actually the result of the positive karma he accumulated in the past coming to fruition. So on this issue, we must carefully examine it. Otherwise, some people nowadays do not consider the principle of cause and effect at all. Allow me to present a compelling analogy. A long time ago, in the ancient and mystical country known as Nihon, a truly extraordinary and unprecedented event occurred. There was a miraculous and abundant rain of grain that descended from the heavens, continuously falling for an entire period of 7 consecutive days. Then, for the next 7 days, there was a rain of clothing, and after that, a rain of precious treasures fell for another 7 days. At that time, their country was extremely happy. Look, treasures, clothing, and grain all descended from the sky. With these blessings coming from the heavens, people experienced no suffering at all. Everyone enjoyed themselves happily, truly delighted. At that time, perhaps a few individuals who did not believe in cause and effect would say, how could this country have committed evil deeds in the past, yet now be so happy and prosperous? But in reality, that was not the case. The longest lasting and most terrifying consequences were still to come. In the end, there was a rain of earth, burying everyone beneath the ground. After death, they were reborn into the lower realms. So, on the surface, it may seem that some people are very happy and successful, but in fact, that is not truly the case either. I recall a specific instance, an illustrative example that I believe I once utilized within the comprehensive discourse of the science of Buddhism. In this particular scenario, there was a man, a dedicated individual, who embarked upon the endeavor of establishing and subsequently opening a medical clinic. One day, during the regular operational hours of this newly established clinic, a woman, who appeared to be approximately 40 years of age, entered the premises seeking medical attention. She was evidently and profoundly ill, and her physical condition, her demeanor, and the visible signs of her suffering strikingly resembled the distressing and agonizing state of a chicken undergoing the process of being slaughtered, a truly harrowing and deeply unsettling sight to behold. Both of her hands trembled uncontrollably, quivering and fluttering like delicate wings, and she continuously kept making soft, repetitive clucking sounds deep within her throat. At that particular time, it is widely said that the esteemed doctor was a devout Buddhist, deeply committed to his spiritual practices. Based on her various symptoms, he completely understood the situation. This person was not suffering from any ordinary worldly illness. Later, he sent her home, and after she returned, she passed away. In fact, she had killed many chickens, and this was the karmic retribution manifesting. It seems that in the profound and insightful book titled Past and Present Lives, a comprehensive and detailed account was provided, revealing the existence of a particular individual who had dedicated their entire professional life and expertise to the specialized and intricate trade of both selling and meticulously slaughtering chickens, a practice that required considerable skill and knowledge. The karma he created was extremely frightening, but he made quite a lot of money. Later, in his life, he had a daughter whose small hands were unfortunately shaped like chicken claws. Moreover, both of her delicate hands were tightly joined and pressed together in front of her chest, creating an unsettling and profoundly disturbing image. The entire situation was undeniably terrifying, evoking a deep sense of dread and unease in anyone who witnessed it. At that time, it was even broadcast on Sichuan TV, and many people witnessed it firsthand. It was indeed because of some of the karma he had created. On the surface, it seemed like he was living a happy life for a while. But in reality, his karma was secretly determining what would happen. So, in this case, when people in the world practice virtuous deeds, indeed, various and numerous obstacles and significant difficulties may inevitably arise. However, these challenges are truly only temporary. In the much longer run, things will certainly not be so incredibly difficult, and the path will become clearer. Therefore, if we encounter some difficulties in our current practice, we shouldn't pay too much undue attention to them or become overly attached to them. Some people mentioned this a little while ago, and it's an important point to consider, that when we practice the preliminary practices now, especially prostrations, all kinds of obstacles arise. At home, this person objects, that person objects, and in many situations it seems a bit difficult. It's not like us monastics who are in quiet places in monasteries, where as long as our body and mind allow, there are no such external obstacles. But for some lay people, that's indeed not the case either. During the process of study, it seems to be a little easier. They study secretly on their own, but when it comes to prostrations, because you have to do them at home or at work, as soon as you start prostrating, people think this kind of action is rather strange, especially in families or workplaces where people don't believe in Buddhism. When we prostrate, they think we're practicing Qigong here. Families tend to worry, which is understandable. But gradually our behavior, our words and actions, will move people around the world and should inspire many wise individuals. So if we give up just because we encounter a little difficulty, that is unreasonable. Therefore, when it comes to the joys and sorrows of impermanence, we should not be overly concerned about gains and losses. We should cast aside all the happiness and enjoyments of this worldly life as if they were spit. For the sake of the true Dharma, we should willingly endure physical hardships and mental trials. We should follow in the footsteps of the Buddha and the great masters and eminent monks who came before us. So we shouldn't be particularly attached to temporary pain or pleasure. When you are happy, pain will inevitably follow behind that happiness. And if you are suffering, there is no need to be especially sad or to complain endlessly. There will also be some happiness behind it. So in this world, there are always many mixtures of pain and happiness arising together. Therefore, when it comes to worldly happiness, fulfillment, and a joyful life, we shouldn't be particularly attached to these things. If you blindly cling to them, you won't gain anything from it at all. Therefore, we should follow in the footsteps of great masters and accomplished teachers. All the worldly glory and wealth should be cast aside as easily as spitting out saliva. We should aspire to the true nectar of the Dharma taught by great masters. This is truly necessary. Indeed, many of us need to seek the truth, to seek the authentic Dharma that transcends the cycle of birth and death. This is something found only in Buddhism, only within Buddhism. If in your pursuit of the Dharma you encounter no difficulties at all, if you experience no suffering and obtain it effortlessly, not to mention ordinary people seeking the Dharma, if you open the biographies of great masters from Tibet or Han regions, you'll see that in the course of their spiritual practice, they too endured many hardships and sufferings. Therefore, in the process of spiritual cultivation, the more obstacles you face, the stronger your mind becomes and the more you can progress. If there are no obstacles or difficulties at all, and everything goes especially smoothly, sometimes it can actually lead to a loss of motivation on the path. Therefore, we should look at how the great masters of the past pursued their studies and practice. We should have a spirit of seeking knowledge. This is very important. The power of the human mind is indeed very strong, whether it's practicing the preliminaries or doing anything else. No matter what kind of difficulties we encounter in this world, I will still do my best to eliminate and overcome them. We must carry out the great undertaking of practicing the Dharma and realize it in this very lifetime. There should be a silent vow within our hearts.
I see that Master Laiguo from the Han regions made 48 great vows, many of which demonstrate the truly commendable and remarkable spiritual power and strength of the mind. This is something that every practitioner should have. The main issue is that our mental strength is insufficient. This is the most crucial point. If your mental strength is sufficient, whether you appear weak or strong on the outside, you will have your own goal in practice and should not encounter difficulties. But many people lack mental strength, and most of their aspirations are for themselves. How do I eat? How do I achieve realization? Everything revolves around myself. Operating solely around oneself is not very reasonable. Therefore, regarding these principles mentioned above, we must sincerely and deeply contemplate and meditate upon them with great earnestness. Next, it is explicitly stated that both good and bad are equally and fundamentally impermanent. Whether good people or bad people in the world, all of these are impermanent as well, subject to constant change and eventual cessation. This is explained from both worldly and transcendent perspectives. First, from the worldly perspective, even those who are eloquent, knowledgeable, and both clever and brave will also experience times of utter defeat. At such times, the merit accumulated in the past has already been exhausted. Their thinking becomes confused and nothing goes smoothly. They are ridiculed by others and feel hurt inside, often suffering humiliation from others. It seems that even the small amount of virtue they once had has been completely depleted, leaving them with nothing at all. This is from the perspective of the world. In the past, they might have been eloquent or persuasive,
truly remarkable in their speech. One could certainly say that they were both exceptionally intelligent and remarkably talented individuals, demonstrating an extraordinary level of capability and truly outstanding personal and professional qualities. However, as time progressed, perhaps due to the natural process of aging, or because various significant and unforeseen obstacles began to arise and accumulate within their respective careers, their previous momentum and success started to wane, presenting new and complex challenges that tested their resilience and adaptability in profound ways. In the end, they suffer a complete downfall, losing everything and falling from grace. At that point, it seems that their former status and reputation, including their wisdom, influence, merit, and wealth, everything is completely gone. At that time, some people truly become confused and muddled. Among people in the world today, some who were once especially famous now seem to have become extremely, extremely pitiful. Last year, some people said that some former party secretaries and county heads from nearby counties would frequently go to a particular tea house in a bustling city to leisurely drink tea. When someone happened to pass by that very spot, they profoundly felt a strong and overwhelming sense of impermanence, a feeling of transience and the fleeting nature of existence. He thought to himself, oh, these people used to be so famous and prestigious. But now look at them sitting in such a shabby tea house, drinking dark, strong tea, and even this tea is especially cheap. In the past, it would have been absolutely impossible for these people to drink this kind of tea. So for some people, whether it's their career or something else, we often see that some people who used to be very, including some of our teachers and people we've interacted with in our previous impression, this person was not only wise and capable, but also eloquent and articulate, truly outstanding in every aspect. But now, after a few years, when you meet them again, they are completely different. This is also a manifestation of impermanence. Indeed, in our lives, we often see this kind of phenomenon. In history, Lu Bue was also quite similar in his approach and actions. At first, it was primarily through his exceptional wisdom and remarkable courage, including his instrumental role in helping his son successfully ascend to the prestigious throne as emperor. And in terms of his remarkable ability and profound wisdom, it could truly be said that he was second only to one, standing far above all others, a truly exceptional individual. He was truly remarkable. But later, tragically, he was ultimately forced to death by his very own son. The truly tragic and deeply sorrowful way in which he was poisoned to death was indeed pitiful and extremely miserable to witness. Such unfortunate phenomena are, regrettably, quite common and frequently observed in the world. So whether it happens to yourself or to others, you need to understand the principle of impermanence, something worldly people simply do not grasp. They don't apply the concept of impermanence to their daily lives. This is their greatest shortcoming, even though they clearly see that kings and ministers in the world, or various impermanent phenomena in the world, pass before their eyes one after another. At such times, they never use the idea of impermanence as a means of spiritual practice. They don't know how to practice. I see that some people who study history just record the events, and that's it. There is simply no intention to integrate it with the content of Buddhism or spiritual practice. So this includes some very famous professors nowadays when they are giving lectures. I sometimes like to listen to their recordings to see how exactly they speak, because they are very successful and well known in the world, with countless university students and intellectuals listening to them. But their only shortcoming is that they don't understand Buddhism. When they don't understand Buddhism, they completely treat it as just knowledge, as something worldly. This depth is simply not enough, truly. They talk about what kind of people appeared in which dynasty and in which year of the Common Era. Then after that, who came to rule, who was in power during the Qing dynasty, who was in the Ming dynasty, and so on, passing down like this. Of course, it's necessary for us to understand these dynasties, kings and ministers in the world. This is also necessary, but the most important thing is it's extremely difficult to give rise to a state of spiritual practice within our hearts. So here, I want to mention that many Dharma friends present today, perhaps many of you are currently very wise, talented, and capable people. But at a certain point, you become confused, and others especially take advantage of you. Sometimes I even think, right now, I haven't yet reached that confused state. Whether the precious things I understand myself, the teachings in Tibetan Buddhism, can be translated into Chinese, whether some profound and deeply significant teachings can be recorded immediately and without delay. Otherwise, after a certain period of time has elapsed, either the physical body won't be well and in good health, or everything in this world is inherently impermanent and happens with great rapidity and swiftness, and by that particular point in time, there may not be such a precious and opportune moment or chance available. So, it is crucial that everyone should fully utilize their own youthful vigor or prime years, those precious times in their lives,
But after a while, everyone will become muddled and confused. At that time, if you see, especially when lying in a hospital bed, when we see some particularly famous people, oh, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death is truly terrifying. When they weren't sick, people greatly admired them. But once they fall ill, or when there's no one around them, no one cares about them, this kind of situation also happens. This is an example of something turning from good to bad. On the other hand, there are also many people who used to lack wisdom and had limited experience, and were often dismissed by others as swindlers, cunning, or hypocritical. But later, after they gained wealth and material enjoyment, they won the trust of others. They came to be seen as truly shrewd, highly capable, and exceptionally knowledgeable individuals. Indeed, just as the ancient saying profoundly goes, the cunning become masters in their old age, accumulating wisdom and expertise over many years of experience and dedicated practice. Indeed, there are some people who previously lacked wisdom, had very little knowledge or practical ability, and whose overall behavior was not proper or acceptable either, and were consequently regarded by others as complete swindlers or cunning, deceptive individuals, and so on and so forth. But later, either because they became wealthy or they were especially capable and pursued learning, they eventually became very famous and highly respected individuals. Once they gained widespread fame and recognition, everyone throughout the entire world held them in truly great respect and profound admiration. I once had the distinct opportunity to meet a venerable geisha from the renowned Shuling Monastery in Drango, a place of deep spiritual significance. I had known him more than 20 years ago. At that time, he was a layperson working odd jobs near the monastery, always doing manual labor. But later, he developed renunciation and went to India to study for about 20 years. As a significant result, he successfully earned the prestigious Geshe degree, and immediately after that, he promptly returned to Drango. When he came back to Drango, all the people, as well as the monks, lined up in a long queue, offering kata to welcome him. The person they were welcoming was the very worker they used to look down on, but later, he became the abbot in the monastery and taught them the Dharma. Once he came to my home and we talked a lot about the teachings on impermanence. He had personally experienced these truths himself. If he hadn't become a monk and pursued study and practice himself, he wouldn't be where he is today. Indeed, whether in worldly life or in spiritual life, many people in the past, including some of our classmates and people we knew well, back then this person was very lowly. His behavior was improper and he lacked wisdom. But after a few years, when you run into him again, he himself has become very arrogant, extremely capable, wealthy, and influential. Everything about him is completely different from us. This kind of thing also happens in the world. Historically, take Liu Bang, for example. At first, he also came from a rather humble family of ruffians and was especially unruly and quite difficult to control. From what we can clearly see in the historical records of the grand historian, this particular person not only profoundly disliked studying and academic pursuits, but his overall character was also extremely poor and morally questionable. Once, the formidable Jiang Yu caught him and said, "Hurikyo, if you don't surrender, I will kill your father in the future, and then boil your father's flesh into a soup for you to drink." At that time, in order to save his own life, he willingly accepted. He said, "Not just one cup. Even if you give me a whole bowl of my father's flesh soup, I would drink it." He accepted it. There was another critical moment in time when the enemy forces were about to imminently capture him, and in order to make a desperate escape, he ruthlessly threw his own family members, including his beloved wife and young children, off the moving carriage. He then immediately sped up the carriage with great urgency to get away much faster from the pursuing enemy. But despite this morally questionable act, he later remarkably became the founding emperor of a powerful dynasty, which was truly an astonishing and historically significant achievement. At that time, he even said to his father, "You always said my second brother was capable and I was not. Now, what do you think of me? Does my second brother have this kind of ability?" He often boasted about himself. So sometimes when we look at history, there can be earth-shaking changes in a person's short lifetime. This is also a manifestation of impermanence. Among those present, some of you who are good people could easily become bad people. And bad people can easily become good people. It's very possible. Sometimes, even among those around me, there are some people who are especially, whether they are venerable or others, some are especially good at giving lectures and reciting texts. Many people say he will definitely become an outstanding, eminent monk in the future. But in my heart sigh, I don't dare to say that. Life is long. Let's wait and see. Some people say, "Oh, this person is really bad, he should be expelled immediately." But if he hasn't really violated any major rules of the institute, it's best not to expel him too quickly. Because in the past, I've encountered situations where, when someone left, Some people who were expelled from our institute went on to become wealthy and gained many disciples outside, including their ability to spread the Dharma, which also became especially strong. So I've received many warm and enthusiastic receptions from them. So truly things are impermanent. Many things are impermanent. This is speaking from a worldly perspective. From a transcendental perspective, there is also a saying like this: those who are realized seek knowledge in old age. Those who are worldly accumulate wealth in old age. And Dharma teachers become heads of households in old age. If someone is said to be realized in their youth, it means they are considered to have attained so-called realization. They begin practicing diligently when they are young, spending years in retreat, not speaking to anyone at all. People say they have attained realization. But these young people, when they grow old, seem not to have attained realization after all. On the contrary, when they really have no other choice, they stop doing retreats and start engaging in study and contemplation. This is what is meant by those who are realized seek knowledge in old age, but actually this is not good. When you are young, you should focus on study and contemplation. Then, in old age, you should devote yourself to practice. Otherwise, if you start doing retreats when you are young without studying at all, and only begin studying when you are old, this is unreasonable. Patrul Rinpoche also said, those who practice in youth and study in old age bring no benefit to themselves and become a cause for others to ridicule. Practicing in youth and then studying in old age, this is meaningless for yourself, and others may even find it a bit laughable. With not a single tooth left in your mouth, you start reciting the 5 great treatises. Wah, wah. Even if you manage to recite the 5 great treatises like this, it's really unnecessary. In old age, you should either practice diligently or recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra. If you haven't acquired any knowledge or skills during your formative years and instead chose to isolate yourself, dedicating all your time solely to practice, it is highly probable that in the long run, your practice will inevitably diminish in quality and effectiveness, leading to a significant decline. Or there will be other obstacles. It's hard to say. As for renunciants, in old age they accumulate wealth and Dharma teachers become heads of households. These 2 teachings are further explained below. Many people, although they spend the first half of their lives as renunciants who abandon all worldly affairs, a renunciant is a wandering monk. They don't want a family or a monastery and just wander everywhere. Apart from practicing the Dharma, they have nothing else. This is the type of renunciant we're talking about. But in the latter half of their lives, they work hard to accumulate wealth. This also happens. In the first half of their lives, they don't need even a needle or a penny. They are the kind of people who want nothing except the 3 robes. But in the end, when they grow old, they become especially fond of accumulating wealth. This kind of situation also exists. Previously, it should have been in October 2006, there was a news report in the Beijing Evening News about a monk over 100 years old who returned to lay life. This was quite shocking and surprising news. This monk was called Shifai Wan. When he was in his 90s, he began to have profound thoughts of returning to a lay life. He had previously served as the esteemed abbot in a temple. Later, it seems the temple was unfortunately hit by a devastating flood, and he subsequently moved to another temple. In the end, this temple became rather deserted, and he had no viable way to make a living. In the very end, when he was at the advanced stage of about 97 years old, he surprisingly married a 53-year-old widow. When diligent reporters interviewed him, he was then an astonishing 101 years of age. Honestly, this is quite a truly shocking and remarkable thing to consider. In the year 2008, the well-known Jiangnan Metropolis Daily also extensively reported on a very similar and equally intriguing case. Perhaps many of you have already encountered or heard about this particular incident. It was, in fact, quite an extraordinary and rather ridiculous situation. It concerned an elderly, venerable monk who, after a lifetime of devotion, made the decision to return to secular lay life. So, what exactly transpired with this individual? He had dedicated an astonishing 70 years of his existence to monastic life, living as a monk for 7 decades. Given such a profound and lengthy commitment, there is truly nothing at all to be surprised about regarding the circumstances or the outcome of his decision. Many people need to reflect on themselves. This isn't just about reading the news. Don't think to yourself, I've been a monk for so many years. He had been a monk for a remarkable period of 70 years at that particular time in his life. Perhaps despite his extensive time in monastic life, he never truly developed a genuine and profound sense of renunciation toward the cyclical existence of samsara. Consequently, he diligently studied some medicine entirely on his own initiative and then proceeded to open his very own clinic. But after opening the clinic, he didn't end up making any money. At first he stayed in the monastery, but gradually he moved from the monastery to the clinic. After running the clinic for 3 years, he remembered that his parents had once told him, "For the peace of your family, you must diligently practice and remain ordained for these 70 years. Then he thought to himself, 70 years have already passed. In the end, his sense of renunciation still wasn't very strong. Later, one of his disciples said, "You have no income now and no one to take care of you. Maybe you should find a companion." Then he went to a marriage agency and started looking there for a partner. As a result, he found a 41-year-old woman. At that time, her family was particularly opposed to this relationship, and that woman had previously been married to someone else before. She had a daughter, and her parents were all strongly opposed. Later, after that man, who wasn't truly a monk in the traditional sense, but rather someone who had adopted a similar lifestyle, started a family and built a life with her, the woman found herself with a modest but steady income of 300 yuan. In stark contrast, the old man, who was also part of their household, had almost no income whatsoever, making their financial situation quite imbalanced and challenging for the woman to manage on her own. Gradually, they both felt that their life together was very happy. Later, when some people in the world asked him, he said, "I am very happy with my life now." He still drank alcohol and smoked, and he managed to keep himself in pretty good shape. That's precisely what some news reports and media outlets have explicitly stated. So indeed, sometimes we tend to think that a particular individual is a truly pure and virtuous monk, someone who has been formally ordained for a great many years and has dedicated their life to spiritual practice. But it's really hard to say. There are some practitioners who truly keep pure precepts throughout their lives and leave this world in that state. And that is truly something to rejoice about from the bottom of one's heart. And that's also what is being said here. There are also those who in the first half of their lives were acharyas who taught the Dharma to others, but in the latter half of their lives became hunters or thieves or bandits and so on. There are also some people who, in the first half of their lives, were pure precept masters, serving as kamavacharya or upadhyaya, transmitting precepts to others as precept masters, but in the latter half of their lives ended up with many children. This kind of situation also exists. I have previously spoken about the Vinaya master of the Choje, Chetsun Nyingtik. At that time, when the Choje was studying in Sertal, he received the root Vinaya and the 300 verses on Vinaya, among others, all from a single teacher. Back then, at that time in their research institute, that teacher upheld the precepts with great purity and conducted himself with exceptional gentleness. Toga Rinpoche also held him in especially high regard. At that time, many of their disciples were in his presence, some seeking ordination, others requesting teachings related to the Vinaya. But later, when the esteemed Choje visited the sacred region of Sertar in the year 1996, that teacher had already, in appearance, returned to lay life and had a child. When he met the Choje at that time, because Guru Rinpoche was an extraordinary master, he prostrated to the Choje. Previously, the Choje had received Vinaya teachings from him and prostrated to him as well. So the two of them prostrated to each other. I wasn't there at the time. Some attendants recounted it this way. However, the Choje often praised and respected him greatly in class. So indeed, such things do actually happen in this wide world. In our humble monastery, there was once a truly remarkable person just like this. When he was young, he was especially pure, and his observance of the Vinaya was impeccable. But later, during the Cultural Revolution, not only did he break his vows and father more than a dozen children, but he also slandered and denounced his teacher. It was as if he had become a completely different person. I also heard that his death was particularly tragic. So, among the stories that have happened around us, we can see that impermanence is indeed real. We should reflect that for now, our own practice may just be putting on a show. We shouldn't show off too much, nor should we think that we are somehow extraordinary right now. This is truly unreasonable. So here it is clearly stated that some individuals spend the entire first half of their lives solely and exclusively committing negative deeds and engaging in actions that are truly harmful. But in the latter half, they wholeheartedly practice the true Dharma and attain realization. Or even if they do not attain realization, they have already taken refuge in Buddhism. After death, they are reborn in Sukhavati. Such cases do exist. There were people who used to be butchers, hunters, prostitutes, or otherwise led very negative lives. But later, because they developed genuine renunciation and practiced with single-minded devotion, yesterday a Dharma friend said he had been a butcher for 2 or 3 years in the past and had killed countless sheep. From this moment forward, he is truly determined to sincerely confess all his past misdeeds and diligently practice his spiritual path. There was also another individual who mentioned that since the year 2001, he has consistently been making prostrations every 3 steps, a truly remarkable and dedicated effort.
to Mount Wutai, Mount Juhua, Mount Putuo, and he has not yet been to Mount Emi. He spoke in the same way. So perhaps in the past they felt that their karmic burdens were especially heavy. For the rest of their lives, they want to become true practitioners, to sincerely repent. There have been people like this in the past, and there will be in the future as well. So, throughout a person's life, there are indeed many changes. The appearance of virtue and vice now can be said to change in an instant. There is absolutely no phenomenon in existence that remains perpetually unchanging or inherently unbreakable. Every single appearance we perceive in this moment, our intricate and evolving mental states, and all of our deliberate actions, are destined to undergo profound transformations and continuous shifts as the inexorable passage of time and the accumulation of years gradually unfold. But some people occasionally develop a bit of renunciation and weariness toward the world. They merely go through the motions, practicing a kind of pseudo-dharma, yet people in the world still regard them as remarkable figures. Later, some benefactors and disciples respectfully prostrate at their feet. At this point, they themselves do not carefully examine their own mental continuum. Instead, they truly believe, I am such and such a person. With arrogance profoundly clouding their minds, their hearts become increasingly restless and agitated, completely out of character for them. They begin to think, now I can truly do anything I desire. Such individuals are truly deluded and seemingly possessed, which is an extremely frightening prospect. So, fellow practitioners here, you must be careful. Patrul Rinpoche's preliminary practices is full of essential instructions. If I try to explain everything at once now, due to time constraints, sometimes I might just be a bit long-winded. It's simply that I have you repeatedly read the Vajra words, just like I mentioned earlier about Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Reading a passage every day will be of great help to your mental continuum. Everything in the worldly existence changes and transforms according to different times. Therefore, perhaps in your own mind stream, by relying on some teachers and some extraordinary objects, you may develop a temporary sense of renunciation, a similar feeling of aversion. This does happen. At that particular time, it is quite possible that you might superficially seek out various teachings, perhaps even profound spiritual doctrines, and then, without fully internalizing them, proceed to transmit them to others. Or alternatively, for a certain period, some distinct and perhaps even fleeting states of mind or specific mental phenomena may spontaneously arise within your mind stream. At that precise juncture, it is not uncommon for some individuals to genuinely believe that their level of spiritual realization or their understanding of profound truths is remarkably good or even exceptionally advanced. They have disciples now and they have wealth. When individuals acquire substantial financial resources, considerable wealth, and significant positions of power, they often become profoundly and completely intoxicated, entering into an entirely different and often dangerous state of being. At that critical juncture, they have already irrevocably lost their fundamental sense of direction and have also completely forfeited the essential mindfulness required to effectively control their own actions and impulses. They then begin to feel an overwhelming and absolute sense of entitlement, believing wholeheartedly, I am now truly capable of doing absolutely anything and everything I desire without any repercussions or limitations. So now it is an unfortunate reality that among the profound and ancient traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, there are indeed some individuals who present themselves as genuine practitioners but are, in fact, inauthentic or fake. These deceptive individuals have regrettably actually caused a considerable and widespread amount of negative influence and detrimental impact on the perception and practice of Buddhism, particularly within the culturally significant Han regions. Because of the actions of a very small number of these people, who act for their own reputation or for some money, apart from that, there is basically no dharma in their hearts at all. Nor do they have any intention of benefiting sentient beings at all. Without such intentions, even if they temporarily use the word Buddhism to cover up their false appearance, gradually people will still become wise to it. Nowadays, many intellectuals have very strong discriminating thoughts, let alone some evil spirits or false teachers. Even the actions of truly virtuous teachers are often subject to discrimination and wrong views. So, over a considerable period of time, people will gradually and progressively be able to clearly spot and identify their inherently unreasonable aspects and their various problematic elements. Therefore, it is absolutely essential that we must, in due course, before the realization of impermanence arises in our continuum, be especially mindful. Otherwise, some people, once they have money and power, completely lose respect for their teachers and the three jewels, and disregard karma and its consequences. They think everything can be done as they please, believing that none of their actions will be subject to any control by the results of good or bad deeds, or by suffering and happiness. Such thinking is ultimately extremely dangerous. So here it talks about many practitioners and some people whose behavior is not very appropriate. They are indeed possessed, which is especially frightening. At that time, even if you are encouraged to listen, contemplate, and practice, you absolutely won't be willing. Some people who have left our institute are indeed like this as well. They used to be very diligent and did very well in all aspects. But after leaving, once they had a bit of money and a few disciples, then all day long, they're just running around back and forth. Whenever you hear about them or see them, you just feel so sorry for them. They haven't even attended a single day of class themselves and have no level of spiritual attainment at all. Yet they go on deceiving these sentient beings, one after another. When their actions are finally seen through in one place, they just move to another place and continue deceiving people there, such people as these. These people are also especially pitiful, following along in a daze every day. Ah, Master, hello, they just start following him. It's truly pitiful. Nowadays, many people just don't use their heads. The other day, someone said, "Some of your Tibetan tulkus are unreasonable," and so on. I replied, "Some of your Han regions lay practitioners are also unreasonable, because according to the true way of relying on a teacher, both sides should observe each other. It's not like a starving dog encountering a piece of prime meat and swallowing it immediately. You can't do that." So nowadays, many people truly treat the Dharma as if it were some kind of merchandise to be bought and sold. This is unreasonable. Each of us should hope not to fall into such a demonic state. On one hand, we should regularly study these key instructions to practice the preliminaries. This is very important. On the other hand, we must sincerely pray, devoutly pray to Guru Rinpoche and the 21 Taras. If you don't know how to recite other verses, then at least recite the Guru Rinpoche mantra and the Tara mantra. You must recite them. This has always been the tradition passed down by many great masters and accomplished teachers in the past. I myself do not dare to claim that I uphold the lineage of the masters in my actions, but in my heart for many years it has always been this way. Sometimes it's truly frightening, especially in this era when evil forces are rampant. It's really not easy to maintain one's own practice. So whenever I have time, I often pray to Guru Rinpoche. Just as it is stated in the treatise on praise and discipline, one will not be controlled by evil forces. Before eradicating self-clinging, before giving rise to the wisdom of selflessness and attaining the fruition of a noble being, the appearances of virtue and vice are all impermanent. When you attain the true fruition of a noble being, then your conduct will not undergo any change. But before you have fully realized selflessness and attained the fruition of a noble being, today I might be willing to practice diligently, but after a while, it's as if I'm possessed. I become unwilling to practice and am inclined to commit all kinds of negative actions. As I mentioned earlier, if at over 90 years old one still wants to return to lay life, that is truly frightening. Therefore, we should constantly contemplate death and impermanence. Examine the faults within our own mental continuum and always remain humble. Give rise to renunciation and the mind of turning away from the world. Keep body, speech, and mind calm and gentle, and be cautious and meticulous. Contemplate that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent and reflect on the suffering of samsara. Always endeavor to remain in a state of strong, unwavering faith and deep, profound renunciation. This passage, as true and dedicated practitioners, how exactly do we effectively grasp the current state and overall condition of our very own practice? This is an especially crucial and profoundly important aspect to consider. We do not need fame, nor do we need any wealth. As long as we have the basic necessities to sustain our practice, that is enough. We do not need any status. We should remain in a humble position. Our actions should always be in accordance with the Dharma and proper conduct. Only by practicing correctly can we truly spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. This is what Patrul Rinpoche said. Only by practicing correctly can we truly spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. If we practice in accordance with the Dharma and proper conduct, we may have the opportunity to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. If we ourselves do not practice properly, some people can be truly shameless. In front of others, they have no idea that they are actually bad people. Moreover, they constantly boast about how remarkable they are, which is truly unreasonable. True great masters, and those who genuinely practice and have real realization, they often reflect on their own faults. Such people are often filled with faith in the Guru and the Three Jewels, as well as a sense of renunciation towards samsara. I often quote this teaching. Milarepa himself also said, "In the deserted valleys and mountain caves, always maintain a mind of renunciation and weariness toward the world. The Guru is the Buddha of the 3 times. Hold unwavering and strong faith, never letting it waver." This is how a true practitioner behaves. Whether in a deserted cave or in an empty monastery, they develop a profound sense of renunciation towards samsara and a strong faith in the Guru and the 3 jewels. It's not that you have faith today and lose it tomorrow. It's not like that. They are always in this kind of state. This is what a true practitioner is. Faith and renunciation, these two are the very foundation of the Dharma. According to the Kadampa teachings, there are mainly 4 causes for developing faith. One is to frequently rely on qualified spiritual teachers and also to associate with good Dharma friends. At the same time, practice contemplation on impermanence and study some sutras and shastras. These are the 4 fundamental and essential causes that contribute to the profound development of unwavering faith. We must also diligently and consistently put these principles into actual meaningful practice in our daily lives, ensuring that our actions align perfectly with our beliefs. Otherwise, because our temporary discriminating thoughts are impermanent, there is no way to be sure what will happen in the future. Right now, we need to practice in this way over the long term. Otherwise, today I may be a practitioner, but what I will become in the future is hard to say. In the past, there was a man who, after his close friends turned into enemies and he was abandoned by everyone, entered the Buddhist path. Because all his relatives had become his enemies. Later, perhaps out of great suffering, he entered the Buddhist path. After a period of practice, he became an extraordinary monk named Tangpa Bhikshu. He attained mastery over the wind element and could fly through the sky. One day, while he was making offerings of food, he gathered a great many pigeons. This person thought to himself, if I had such a large army, it would be enough to wipe out all my enemies. Because his former relatives had all become his enemies. At that time, he was a very good bhikshu. He had attained freedom of body and mind and could fly freely through the sky. But during the process of offering food, he gathered many birds. At that moment, he thought, how wonderful it would be to have so many followers. In the future, I would have enough power to eliminate all these enemies of mine. Because at that time his evil thoughts were not transformed into the path, it eventually led him to return to lay life and become the leader of an army, which was truly terrifying. So, just a single thought can make all the difference for us. If our minds are not properly transformed at the right moment, it can still be very frightening. Trading the yellow robe for the purple kasaya, all because of a single mistaken thought in the past. This is also mentioned in Emperor Shunji's verse on leaving home. Now the emperor's yellow robe has been exchanged for a purple kasaya. What is the reason for this? It was all because of a single mistaken thought in the past. What he meant was that perhaps at that time, his mind was not properly transformed. I am originally a monk from the West. Why was I born into an imperial family? This scriptural evidence, you spoke quite loudly. He said it like this, so it was a difference of a single thought. Previously, Venerable Master Xuanhua had a work called Water Mirror Reflecting Heaven Record, or Records of Reflections in Water and Mirrors, Som. The discussion centered on the historical figure of the Chongzhen Emperor, who reigned during a tumultuous period. He was in fact the very last emperor of the illustrious Ming dynasty, a dynasty that had endured for centuries. In his previous incarnation, he was known to be a dedicated and assiduous novice monk, diligently pursuing his spiritual practices with great devotion. Despite his monastic vows and commitment to spiritual cultivation, he frequently harbored a persistent and profound desire, a recurring thought, of one day ascending to the imperial throne and becoming a powerful emperor. Later on, perhaps because of a single mistaken thought, he failed to properly transform his mind for the way, and so he had to leave this world. When he was about to leave this world, the abbot of the monastery at that time made a request. They brutally tied his lifeless corpse to the powerful tail of a horse, and then mercilessly dragged it along the ground, grinding it away into nothingness. This horrific act was intended to eliminate some of the immense suffering he would inevitably face in the future. However, at that very moment, two compassionate monks, witnessing this barbarity, thought this treatment was far too cruel and inhumane. So instead of allowing the dragging to continue, they respectfully buried him deep in the earth, providing a more dignified end. But later it was said that the Chongzhen Emperor did indeed hang himself at Coal Hill. It should have been Venerable Master Xuanhua who said this at the time. In his previous life, he was a novice monk, but because of various causes and conditions that were not handled well at the time, so he became such an emperor, and indeed the latter part of his life was quite miserable. That was the reason. Therefore, in our own practice, we should often turn our minds toward the path. In Buddhism, it is said that we should turn our minds toward the path and frequently reflect on ourselves. Otherwise, it's hard to say what we might become in the future. Some people are very pure after ordaining, but when they encounter family members or adversaries, at that point they return to lay life and even get into fights with others. This kind of situation also happens. Similarly, by temporarily relying on the support of good teachers and virtuous friends, we gain the opportunity to practice. But the thoughts of ordinary people are never truly reliable or constant. Therefore, we should diligently practice day and night, keep practicing as long as we live. This is very important. We must keep learning until we reach the ultimate goal. We can't just study for a day or two. We must keep learning throughout our lives, as there is no end to learning. In the distant past, the remarkably talented Sudongpo during his formative years possessed a truly exceptional and astonishing memory. Whenever he diligently read an article, he genuinely felt he could effortlessly remember every single intricate detail with absolute clarity. Later, he confidently thought there was absolutely no one else in the entire world quite like him, possessing such a profound intellect. On one particular occasion he meticulously wrote a clever and insightful couplet. Having read all the books under heaven, I recognize every character in the world. He believed that after reading all the books in the world, he had mastered every character. Then he hung the couplet on his front gate. One day, his servant told him that an elderly woman with white hair had come to see him. So he graciously allowed her to enter, and the elderly lady then inquired, "Have you truly, unequivocally read all the numerous books in the entire world and meticulously recognized every single character within them?" At that very moment, Su Dongpo, feeling quite exasperated, replied rather indignantly, "Yes, indeed, of course I most certainly have. Haven't I, in fact, done precisely that?" In the end, the old lady handed him a book and said, "Can you read this book for me?" As it turned out, he didn't recognize a single character in it. Then the old lady told him, "You should take down this couplet." He was about to tear it down right then. He felt so embarrassed by his boastful words that he wanted to tear it down immediately. But the old lady said, "You don't need to tear it down. Just add 2 words at the beginning. Strive to read all the books in the world. Resolve to recognize every character under the sun. This is the vow I should make. This is the oath I should take. This is the right way." So, young people, there is no end to learning. From the perspective of scholarship, there is truly no end to learning. As for spiritual practice, it's true that we must keep practicing for as long as we live. This is something each and every one of us must keep in mind. We must carefully observe and deeply contemplate the principles mentioned above. After reflecting on these various analogies, we should have deep faith. From the highest realms of existence to the lowest hells of unrelenting suffering, there is nothing that is truly permanent or stable. Everything is by nature subject to change, increase, and decrease. All right, we'll stop here for now.
Om